What is missing in today's AI? Take it away. Kush?
So, I mean, my perspective to things is that if we are kind of in this early phases of AI, and I like to think of AI as how AlphaGo sees the world, which has two components. So before AlphaGo beat everyone at Go, the greatest Go player of all time, it was actually just trained on learning. And our current systems are only the imitation learning and the learning component of it. But to truly create this superhuman AI, we need to go over and do what AlphaFold did, which is start to search. So now AI can find its own answers instead of just learn from this human corpus of data.
Interesting.
I would say transparency. I think right now, AI has become pretty synonymous with a chat-based interface that we see with tools like ChatGPT. And I think this causes some problems. I think the outputs we get from these generative models seem to be more like prophecies than one of many possibilities that could be output from these models. So I think building an interface that is more sort of intuitive, explorable, and connected to the underlying data is what we need to build trust in these systems and to use them more in mission-critical scenarios.
If you had to bet an enterprise on a different interface that isn't a chat interface for AI, what would it be?
Something similar to Leighton Lab.
Good sell.
Yeah, kind of following up on Kevin's answer on that, I would say there's still a ton of opportunities as we figure out how to evaluate these large models as they generalize to tasks that the community hasn't thought about before. So the benchmarks that have been laid out by the AI community have not taken into account the many ways that they're now proliferating across many different industries. And of course, as you saw, the area that I work in is on social tasks. And there's a plurality of interpretations about how to evaluate large language model performance on these social tasks. So that's a big problem area that's going to require a diversity of perspectives in order to set the evaluation benchmarks for these complex social tasks.
I think, being interested in creativity, I think we need really wide variety and diversity of tools for people. And the reason I think that is that the most exciting creative insights and ideas aren't in the training data. And we need to but they're supported by the training data. We need to support people in extracting things and bringing things out in a way that supports the kinds of tasks that they're really doing. I think across domains, we need really a combination of specialists and generalists to build detailed, evocative tools that allow us to think of new things.
What's the question?
What is the future of AI? What is AI missing?
In my area, I think explainability is really important. And so I'm very interested in, like I mentioned, with new architectures evolving, TBD if they're even performant on this problem, but if a new architecture does evolve that is performant on the problem, we know like with more complexity typically it means harder to explain, but explainability will be very important for consumers and consumer protections.
Good answer. So the question, to repeat it for the camera and the audience, is there are a lot of bad actors out there trying to attack AI systems, and how do we build robustness and defenses against those bad actors? It sounds in particular talking about content. There's this concept of data poisoning, where you can put backdoors or malicious data in training sets, and then that will cause bad downstream effects in the resulting models. A PhD student who's not on the panel, who was going to be here, works on data provenance and the security of what's going into AI models. And it's like a really interesting question. Does anyone else want to talk about backdoors, threats, bad actors?
A quick note maybe on platform accountability, I would say. So the ability to detect AI-generated content really varies based on the domain. Like our ability to detect AI-generated imagery is a lot better than our reliable detection of AI-generated text. And both are pretty easy to generate, but a lot of what we consume on the internet is in the form of written text, right? So the media industry certainly expects an influx of AI-generated content. And in the absence of great detection systems, my opinion, and I think the academic opinion of many people who work on this problem, is that there has to be platform accountability on social platforms like Facebook, like Instagram, to label and flag bad actors that are using AI-generated content. There's also outstanding questions still about how to disclose properly about edited content or AI-generated content. So these questions, I think the locus of focus should be on the platforms to create some accountability mechanisms. And obviously we have a role to play in promoting that.
Yeah, and just to call out on that, like I think the increasing conversation around Section 230 is really relevant to your question there and to your comment where basically there's new regulation. People are talking about how do we hold platforms accountable? Are they liable for any like misuse that happens on the platforms? Can they be sued for any information, misinformation that results in harm? And I think that goes to your question as well, or your point as well.
Great answers.
For that.
Question in the back. Well, so to repeat the question, there's an issue that law is not up to date with how this technology is moving, and that creates lots of problems. You should definitely talk to Hope. You should also talk to someone who might come on stage in a second called Robert Mahari. He's a JD at Harvard and a PhD here, and works on the future of AI for law and the law of AI, and has been working with regulators to think about what we can actually put in text, in legislation, that is dynamic to changing systems of AI, and really being thoughtful about that. And we've been working with a bunch of regulators, so super interesting, great question. Any takers? Any question takers? Oh, we've got one here. So does AI create an access to technology or perpetuate a digital divide? Takers.
I mean, this might be a little hot take, but I think it really depends on us. When Google was forming, they actually had a moment in time where they said, should we let people pay for search, or should we make it free and try to monetize a different way? I think Facebook and all these other media companies also had kind of a similar problem that they faced. And I think Google picked a version where information is accessible to all, but then it will run ads. And then that caused a whole plethora of problems. But I think to answer kind of your question, it really depends on us which kind of path we choose.
Yeah, I would echo what Kush is saying, and I think we're at a very pivotal point right now. And I would just sort of point out that I think there's a lot of interesting things happening in the space of open source AI, and I think that funding open sourcing or sort of making use of these open source models, I think, is a way to sort of make that possible, where that we don't create this digital divide and that we sort of democratize access to this technology.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting. I'll slightly disagree, just so that we have some more controversy here. We can't all agree. Right now, ChatGPT is paid, which means only people who can afford $20 a month, which is a substantial fee, can use ChatGPT. Now, you could do advertising in it. You could type into ChatGPT, what are some activities for this weekend? Be like, oh, you could explore nature, which would be excellent in the Subaru Forester. And maybe that is a bad world, but it does mean more people might get access to the computational abilities of GPT-4 and GPT-5. So maybe them having a paid system is actually bad for the world. I don't know what the right answer is. Great. Any controversial questions? I want to get everyone here in trouble. PhD students don't get into enough trouble, so we've got to work on this. Absolutely. I have a related talk that I can give. I'm going to reformat that question and restate it. Open source versus closed source. There's this big debate in kind of the frontier AI community. Should models be released open source for anyone to edit, to fine tune, to change, to use, or only be closed source where all of the weights are stored securely and only accessible via an API like through OpenAI or Anthropic? Open source or closed source?
We're doing a poll.
Yeah. Hands up for open source. We should open source all of our AI models. We've got two people that believe. Should our best models, our most performant models that enterprises want to use that are 99.9% reliable, be open source or closed source? You say closed source. Why?
It depends on how far we get with safety and transparency and all these things that we were talking about. There's still a ton of risks, and this thing came out before we'd figured out a lot of those things. So there's some real risks to consider.
It's a good answer.
I would say, coming back to that safety question earlier, I think that there is some interesting work happening in that space as well in the open source area. So community notes on X, I think, is a great example of this, where we're not relying on sort of a centralized entity to say whether this is good or bad, but we're looking to the community to give their input. AI isn't just going to be the only bad actor. There can be human bad actors, and we still rely on our community to understand who is a good actor and who is a bad actor. And I think we can sort of translate that to this space as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great answer. So are people going to lose interest in content that's AI generated as we just have this massive proliferation of AI generated nonsense on our platforms? Hope, do you, Nikki, go.
I mean, yes, I think this is like a massive problem in the media space, as I said earlier, in the platform space. And I don't have any short hot takes about how that will be solved, but I personally believe that human creativity and agency will be at the center and like will come out on top, but we have to make sure as consumers and as platform designers and as technologists that we always keep in mind what is uniquely human and not replaceable by these technologies, despite their ability to assist us and boost us in some important ways.
Yeah. I think you saw this before with like the rise of electronic music, for example, and then certain tastemakers would react against that and would prioritize aesthetics that came from human musicians. We've seen it in visual art, we've seen it in other domains, and I think people are already starting to be exhausted by the aesthetics of AI-generated images. And are going to start pushing alternative aesthetics, are going to start playing with them to make them more their own and find kind of new elements. So I think human creativity is remarkably resilient and we'll find ways around it, but that includes getting sick of things.
Let me also add as a counterexample, just dogs on Facebook. So you all know someone in your life who has a Facebook feed that's just full of cute dogs, right? You don't really know where these dogs are coming from. You just keep scrolling because they're cute. I follow a page that shows AI-generated images on Facebook and Reddit and Twitter. And there are Facebook pages that are just AI-generated dogs. Just cute dogs, prompt, give me a photo of a cute dog. It's a whole feed of them, infinite cute dogs. People love it, gets tons of likes. Because really, like, you're there to see something cute, you don't really care who created it. And I think there will be parts of ecosystems of social media that will be full of nonsense content and people will continue to love it. All right, I think one last question given the time. All right, quick question. Disclosure requirements for AI models. You are now suddenly the czar of AI for the United States of America. What do you make as the disclosure requirements?
So I think for proprietary models, which are like that are supposed to make decisions on safety, you don't want full disclosure on how they're making the decision, besides the verification that they've done it in the right way on the back end, because then bad actors could evade these rules, or evade the way that they're making the decision.
That's good. I like that answer. Any other takers?
I would just, for the counterpoint, I think going back to the origin of the question, where if you're taking input from the user and then using that to further train or refine a model behind the scenes, I do think that these disclosures make sense to have.
All right, and I never got to you with a question, so do you want to take it?
Yeah, balancing environmental concerns and making billions of cute dogs.
So balancing the environmental concerns that come from running GPUs in data centers for thousands of hours versus making cute dogs. How do you guys feel about how much CO2 you emit every time you click run on your experiments? Anyone want to like share their emotions, like really wash themselves of their sins?
I mean, I think that a trend that we will see, again, not for super complex tasks, is just that smaller models fine-tuned for the tasks that you actually need, rather than these like giant general purpose models, will continue to be a trend. And obviously OpenAI did a great job making their API accessible and everyone's using these bigger models. But I think we'll also see that people will start to opt for smaller models that are very well performing for their smaller stuff. And regarding the infinite stream of AI generated dogs, hire a human to like make one good dog. Like, I don't think we need an infinite stream of the dogs, but that's my personal opinion. So I think small models will have their moment too.
A good answer. Okay, we are out of time. Let's thank all of the graduate researchers here at MIT.